I'd like to acknowledge the presence also Senator Nancy Binay. This is our first committee meeting. So before anything else, I would like to present for the adoption of the body the rules of the Senate as the committee's internal rules. Can you make a motion?
Madam Chair, I move that we adopt the rules of the Senate and the rules of procedure governing inquiries in aid of legislation as the internal rules of the committee. So move, Madam Chair.
There's a motion for the adoption of the rules of the Senate as the committee's internal rules. Is there any objection? Hearing none, the motion is approved. The rules of the Senate is hereby adopted to serve as the internal rules of the Committee on Public Services. For the information of all those present, the jurisdiction of the Committee on Public Services includes all matters affecting public services and utilities, communications, land, air, river, and sea transportation, including railroads, inter-island navigation, and lighthouses, and the grant or amendment of legislative franchises. The Chair would like to acknowledge the presence of Senator De Lima and Senator Senator Villanueva and Senate Minority Leader Ralph Recto. In the area of transportation, I believe our primordial concern should be to address the plight of long-suffering commuters and prioritize their welfare and interests. I personally believe that our long-term transportation plan should be anchored on a vision of an inclusive, resilient, and sustainable urban settlements. The time is now to develop an integrated multimodal transport system, pursue innovative and data-driven transport solutions, and improve transportation governance. Thus, among the bills and resolutions that have been referred to the committee so far, we have chosen to prioritize consideration of those measures that propose to give emergency powers to the President to address the transportation and traffic crisis. The bills and resolutions on granting emergency powers to the President have been primarily referred to the Committee on Public Services and secondarily referred to the Committee on Constitutional Amendments and Revision of Codes and the Committee on Finance. These bills include the following: Senate Bill number 11, introduced by Senator Drilon; Senate Bill number 154, introduced by Senator Ejercito; Senate Bill number 999, introduced by Senator Alan Cayetano; Senate Bill number 33, introduced by Senator Ralph Recto; proposed Senate Resolution number 59, introduced by Senator Recto. I'm sorry, let me go back. Proposed Senate Resolution number 33 by Senator Ralph Recto also. Proposed Senate Resolution number 63 by Senator J.V. Ejercito. We shall now commence our joint public hearing. Muli, magandang umaga sa inyong lahat. Naririto kayong lahat at maraming salamat sa inyong oras. In fact, the people in this room can be divided into two groups, those who came in early and those who were na traffic. But I must thank the ones, our resource persons who are here early and complete, and also our senators who made an effort to be here on time. If the latter is slowly becoming the acceptable national excuse, ang pambansang dahilan for tardiness, it is because in many cases, there is basis in invoking it. We don't need statistics to prove how traffic has gone from bad to worse in Mega Manila and other parts of the country. Cars move in glacial pace. If you're lucky to hit 30 kilometers per hour in EDSA, then you're lucky. The only hope for a fast mode of travel in the metropolis, the trains, have been derailed by old equipment or the lack of it, poor maintenance, and the culprit that slows train service, bureaucratic inertia. People, including children who should still be asleep, now wake up before dawn to catch an MRT train that can still accommodate passengers, only to realize that the time to queue for a ticket is now longer than the train ride itself. And they who rise before sunrise have to go through a harrowing commute just so they can be home by midnight. Nakikipagsiksikan sa bus, hinahabol ang taxi, kakandong sa UV, bibitin sa estribo ng jeep, kokontrata ng pedicab, o manghuhuli ng Grab or Uber na tila mailap pa sa Pokemon nila. The sad reality is that for many, the time spent for the rest is less than the time spent on the road. They also say that it is now faster to fly across the ocean than to drive across town. But not anymore, because there's also congestion in the air. Pati sa ere may traffic din. As anyone who had recently taken a flight out of NAIA would tell you, the time spent by a plane queuing for takeoff is sometimes longer than the actual flight itself. Simply put, our mandate is to create a system which transports our people and their products, the nation's commuters as well as its commerce, in a manner that is safe, reliable, accessible, and affordable. As you know, the services enumerated in our committee's mandate happens to be this government's priority, and the pressure for them to deliver is great. But the burden is not theirs alone, but ours too, because we serve the people who gifted us with the same mandate to serve. Thus, let me assure our friends in the executive that we will not be competing with you in finding problems. We will be cooperating with you in finding solutions. The President has supplied the framework on how to fix the traffic mess, which in capsule form is that extraordinary problems require extraordinary powers to solve. The rule on such requests for great powers has always been the President proposes, Congress disposes. We will soon wade into the details of the bills and carefully study its provisions with no other motive but to improve it. We must be open to innovative solutions and be ready to think out of the box. But though we are open to innovation, we must also be responsible with our actions. Giving the President emergency powers necessarily raises concerns about concentration of powers in one person, as this could easily be abused. There are fears that if we grant emergency powers for this issue, then we open the floodgates to granting emergency powers for other so-called crises or emergencies. We must therefore post important questions on the extent of those powers. For instance, we must have clear-cut parameters as what constitutes an emergency. Second, we must be clear on what those emergency powers will be used for and whether they can effectively address the problems. It is important for us to define and quantify the objectives of the bills. Let me share with you the principles I will apply in evaluating your requests for emergency powers. First, it must be FOI compliant. This is a one non-negotiable principle, constant in its implementation. It must permeate and penetrate all activities, contracts, projects, biddings, documents, awards, payments made pursuant to the act of granting emergency powers. Letting the sunlight in construction results in better built infrastructure. Second, it must be fiscally responsible. The power to expedite projects is not a license to contract an expensive one. We may allow you to take shortcuts for as long as they do not shortchange the taxpayers. There must be no hidden costs or undeclared conditional debts that will be passed on to several generations. Third, it must have details and deadlines. We will not go for vague powers or blank checks. Hindi pwede ang bahala na kami. Everything must be well-defined. The parameters must be set. I assure you, there will be elbow room and wide latitude given, but not wide enough for thieves to sneak in. We will also insist on deadlines. It is not enough that you will tell us that you will build a tunnel. We will require you to tell us the exact date we will see the light at the end of it. I think the most important is that we will only give you a set of powers on the condition that you will first give us the bill of particulars. The powers must be in pursuit of clearly identified results. What are the exact deliverables, the cost of each, and when will it be finished? Specifically, the location of projects, the price tag of each, and the deadline of completion. We will also be inquiring on projects that may need no powers of the emergency kind to implement. Kapag may obstruction sa kalsada, hindi emergency powers ang kailangan, pero tow truck. Kapag may nakabarang illegal na terminal sa kanto, hindi emergency powers ang kailangan, kundi pulis. Kapag ang isang lugar ay madaling bahain, na nagbubuhol tuloy ang traffic, umaambon lang, hindi emergency powers ang kailangan. Ang kailangan ay mga taong maglilinis ng kanal at estero. So what we will request you is to tell us the things you plan to do and tell us which of them would require emergency powers. You and I agree that not all challenges entail the bestowal of special powers to solve them. Today, we have asked the Secretary of the Department of Transportation to give us an overview of the state of our land and the transport system. We have asked the pertinent agencies under the department to make a brief presentation, limiting it to their top 3 concerns and top 3 projects or plans of actions. We have asked the chair of the MMDA to do the same. This will give the members of our committees an idea of the lay of the land, so to speak. Initially, this meeting was supposed to be an organizational meeting and briefing for the Committee on Services, Public Services. However, we realized that the members of the other committees that we must tackle the proposal to grant emergency powers to the President to solve the transportation crisis. It would also benefit from this briefing. We all need to fully understand the problems before tackling the details of the proposed solutions. If the problems can be clearly and specifically identified, then hopefully the powers to be granted shall likewise be specific, clear, and time-bound. Before we begin with the presentations, and I would like to acknowledge the presence of our resource persons, and then also Senator JV, our Vice Chair, will also give a brief opening statement. Let me acknowledge our guests. First of all, Secretary Arthur Tugade, the Department of Transportation. Thank you, sir, for your presence. Yusek Romel Gavieta. Thank you. Yusek Gary de Guzman. Yusek Felipe Hudan. Yusek Raul Criencha. Yusek Noel Quintanar. Yusek Ann Lontok. Yusek Bobby Lim. Asek Lea Kiambao. Asek Cherry Santos, Chairman Martin Delgra III, ASEC Edgar Galvante, General Manager Ed Monreal, DG Tony Buendia Jr., Attorney Miguel Ora, Mr. Julius Corpus, Mr. Elmer Benitez, Mr. Joe Geronimo, ASEC Gerald Reyes, Attorney Emerson Carlos, Director Maria Josefina Faulan, Director Noemi Recio, Director Geoffrey Aguilan, and I'd also like to acknowledge the presence of Senator Drilon, Senator Aquino, and I think I acknowledged Senator De Lima earlier. So now, may we hear first Senator JV to give his brief opening statement.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. First of all, I'd like to thank the Chair for acting swiftly on this very urgent measure. No? This is supposed to be an organizational meeting, but because of the urgency of the measure seeking to grant emergency powers to the President, filed by Senate President Pro Tempore Franklin Drilon, Senator Ralph Recto, and yours truly, our chair already acted on it swiftly. So I'd like to thank our chairperson, Senator Grace, for having this hearing right away. Our traffic crisis is no laughing matter. Traffic congestion is not just happening during rush hours, but all throughout the day. It is an economic hemorrhage that needs serious attention and in dire need of immediate treatment. Our economy bleeds. More than 2 billion a day and could swell up to 6 billion in 2030 if we will not find an effective cure for this malady. Kailangan natin ng mabilis at epektibong solusyon para maampatan ang pagdurugo ng ating ekonomiya at pahirap sa ating mamamayan na dulot ng matinding traffic. Apart from the economic hemorrhage, the traffic crisis also has a heavy social cost as the long commutes disrupt family life and social ties. The time we spend on roads is time lost with our families. The proposed special powers for the President is the first step in solving our traffic situation that is a cancer approaching its terminal stage. To address this transport crisis, as principal author, my proposal is to give the President special powers for a period of 2 years to reform our transportation system. To execute the said reform, our President will have the option to use any of the alternative modes of procurement under our procurement rules. But as what our chairperson has indicated, the FOI, or the transparency because of or the freedom of information, which was also stressed by the President through his executive order, is non-negotiable. Further, he will be empowered to acquire real property needed as right-of-way, site, or location for any government transportation infrastructure. I also propose that any programs implemented using the special power will be exempted from any court injunction, but as a safeguard to the given special power and a form of check and balance, the Supreme Court will be allowed to use an injunction. I hope my colleagues in this chamber, and likewise I'd like to thank this early all the resource persons who are here to this morning, and I hope that my colleagues in the chamber will support my proposal so they can finally put an end to the transportation crisis. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator JV. I'd like to make a special acknowledgement actually for Senator Drilon for being here as the chair of the Committee on Constitutional Amendments. He will also give a brief opening statement.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And allow me to welcome our resource persons led by Secretary Tugade. You know, Madam Chair, in 2014, on my way to a relative's wedding in Baguio, I had to endure 11 and a half hours of traffic in the North Luzon tollway. It was a crisis not only because of the length of time I had to stay on the road, but also because I had a 9-kilometer toilet line, which everybody was using. Sadly, this is not just my story. This is the story of everyone today. The horrors of this traffic crisis spare no one. Nobody is immune from its choking grip. It steals from every Filipino time, regardless of position or state of life. It is time to turn this crisis around. I therefore filed Senate Bill number 11, the first bill filed on this transport emergency, and we filed Senate Bill 11, or the Transport Crisis Act, to give the President the necessary and proper powers to immediately address this national emergency. Under my proposed Transportation Crisis Act, the President is authorized to adopt alternative methods of procurement for the construction, repair, rehabilitation, improvement, and maintenance of the transportation projects. In all instances, however, the President must ensure that the most advantageous price for the government is obtained and that the procedure is undertaken in a transparent manner. The bill likewise prohibits the issuance of the temporary restraining orders and preliminary mandatory injunctions to fast-track the transportation infrastructure development. To address the traffic management woes brought about by overlapping functions of government institutions, the proposed measure designates the Metro Manila Development Authority as the sole urban traffic management authority in Metro Manila and the Department of Transportation in other urban areas. For this purpose, the President may abolish, create, and reorganize offices concerned. We may not realize it, but just to focus, for example, on EDSA, if you look at it, there are no less than 6 local government units along EDSA. You start with Caloocan, Quezon City, San Juan, Mandaluyong, Makati, Pasay City. So by any language, it is extremely difficult to manage the traffic flow in EDSA. And then you have the local government code, which gives each local government unit authority and power over traffic. And therefore, and you have a Metro and Metro Manila Commission composed of 17 mayors, each having his or her own turf. My good friend here, JV Ejercito, is laughing because he was part of that for a while. So, how can, you have, sintunado po tayo rito, 17 ang nasa orchestra, iba-iba ang tinutugtog, at kawawa naman yung MMDA, and we all blame the MMDA chair for this. Also, in DOTC, you have the LFDRB, ganun ba yun? Who would grant franchises without consulting MMDA. And yet, that's why you see buses running around with probably less than 10 passengers on EDSA. So all of this, in our proposed measure, we identify a single authority. And we identify a single authority being the MMDA. And at least for the period of emergency, the MMDA should be the sole authority insofar as the Metro Manila traffic is concerned, and particularly focusing on EDSA. It is no exaggeration when I say that everybody, every single person in this room and in our country is waiting for the government to do something about this traffic mess. So we are thankful that our colleague Senator Grace Poe has initiated this hearing very early, and we do hope to get some input, valuable input from our resource persons in order that we can present this on the floor of the Senate and see what we can do in order to address this transportation mess that we're in. Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator Drilon. Let us begin now with the presentation of the Department of Transportation by Secretary Tugate. Sir.
Senator, Madam Chair, magandang umaga ho sa lahat ng miyembro ng Committee on Public Service. Sa totoo lang ho, ayan yung sabihin ko muna ang personal na pakiramdam ko ngayon. Sa totoo lang ho, not in my dreams, not in my wish, neither my ambition, that I will enter the halls of Senate. And neither in my wish or in my dream that I'll be in front of senators who, in my private interactions with them, professional and official, I have respected and learned to idolize. Having said this, ma'am, since I really would like to enjoy the feeling of being and stepping inside the Senate halls, if the chair would allow me, I would like to be able to stand up, go back there in front, so that it affords me the ease and the flexibility in saying what I would like to say, and hopefully to be able to address the needs and the expectations of the Committee on Public Service.
Absolutely, sir. By all means, whatever
Kung
will
wala
make
hong
it easier for
mikropono,
you
lalakasan
also.
ko na lang ang boses ko. Natukoy at nabanggit ho yung mga kadahilanan kung bakit dapat tayo magkaroon ng special power. Napakinggan ko at ninamnam ko yung sinabi ng ating chairman na kung saan linahad niya ang kanyang ekspektasyon, ang kanyang guidelines. Napakinggan ko yung sinabi ni Senator Ejercito at sinabi ni Senator Drilon na kung saan binigay nila ng kadahilanan kung bakit dapat magkaroon ng special power. 3 puntos ho ang sinabi ng ating chairman na dapat bigyan tibay at kilalanin upang ang pag-uusap sa special power ay bigyan katugunan. Sabi po ng ating chairman, dapat ho maging FOI compliant. Madam, I give you my word during my watch, and I sit here and I discharge my duties as Secretary, whatever we do, not only in relation to the special power or emergency power, we shall be FOI compliant. Number 2 ho, sinabi ninyo na kailangan accountable at transparent. And we should not give the elbow room to the crooks and the thieves to sneak in the middle of the night and try to take advantage of the so-called special power. Madam, I stand on the spirit of accountability and transparency. It shall be so done. Number 3, you said, Madam, that we shall be time-bound. Timelines must be set. We will give you the timelines. We will give you the deadlines that will guide us in our pursuit of what we think is necessary for this country. And over and above that, as you have expected, we shall be open and transparent when it comes to cost. Having said that, the discussions today was predicated on a letter sent by the Honorable Chairman, whereby the Chairman has expressed 2 purposes wherein we are invited today. First reason is for me to give an overview of the transport and traffic industry. And number 2, requesting that all the attached agencies with regulatory function in the Department of Transportation be given 5 minutes to present 3 challenges and 3 priorities that is presently confronting each and every attached agencies, challenges and expectations that will confront in its totality the entire Department of Transportation. We will exactly do that, Madam. And to start with it, let me present to you an overview. Kumbaga sa sine, this will give you a sneak thriller kung bakit kinakailangan at nangangailangan tayo ng special power. We will be as generic as possible because the letter indicated that our presentation today must be time-bound. And so I will be as generic as possible, observing the request for time-boundedness. Madam Chair, if you will allow me to present the overview of the traffic and transport industry. I think it is primordial and to the best interest of all to remember and focus to the organization at the very outset, because it is this organization that will address the requirements and needs and the rigors of special power. When I assumed office some 32 days ago, ang Department of Transportation ho sa itaas ay yung tinatawag ko kumbaga sa kanta Jambalaya. Ibig sabihin, ang accountability hindi malinaw, ang responsibility hindi nakalatag ng malinaw. Ibig sabihin, pag nakaroon ng problema sa transportasyon, pag nakaroon ng problema sa maritime, pag nakaroon ng problema sa riles, pag nakaroon ng problema sa kalsada, hindi agarang maituturo kung sino yung pamunuan na dapat kausapin, humingi ng paliwanagan o paluin. And so having said this, what I did, ma'am, is to make the organization sectoral at the Department of Transportation. Hindi ho bago ito. Kinopya ko lang yung organisasyon na kung saan nandoon ho yung isang kalihim na nagngangalan Ping de Jesus. Structural ho ang ginawa niya at sinundan ko. Doon sa Department of Tourism, I made it sectoral. May aviation. An undersecretary that is in charge of aviation, airports, and air operation. Kasama na ho at kalakip dito, yung tinatawag na attached agencies, yung CAAP, yung CAB, yung Manila International Airport Authority. Doon ho, pag nagka-aberya sa operasyon ng airport, operasyon doon sa air transportation, hindi na kayo magtatanong sino ang hahanapin. Hanapin niyo ho yung undersecretary na kung saan ang in charge ay si Bobby Lim. Si Bobby Lim, hayaan nyo yung sabihin ko ngayon, hindi ho siya bagito sa industriya ng airlines at airports. Siya ho ay ang pamunuan ng IATA noon. Galing sa private sector, sasabihin na natin for loose words, ma'am, nagpaaliw at nagpabola sa akin at nakuha ko So, siya ang nangunguna ngayon dyan. Meron ho tayong tinatawag na land sector. Ang namumuno sa land sector ay isang undersecretary na kung saan siya ho, nung sa 6 na taon ay tinawag na nakapriser. For what reason or another, I do not know. I did not bother to find out. But I did realize that when she was being frozen for a period of 6 years, she was studying in Harvard. She was studying at University of the Philippines, learning traffic management and urban transition and public administration. Nung nalaman ko ho at nakita, inaya ko siya. Meron kang kaalaman, pumunta ka sa akin, tulungan mo ako sa land. Anyway, nandito nga ka nga naman for the last 6 years. Oo nga't nandudong ka sa classroom, ngayon yung napag-aralan mo sa classroom, i-apply mo dito. Meron ho tayong organisasyon na tinatawag RAIL. Rail and Railroad. Kasama na ho dito yung TRB, yung tolls. Kinuha ko yung isang nagtatrabaho noon sa tinatawag na Ayala Group of Companies. Ang issue ho dito, bakit ako kumuha sa Ayala Group of Companies, pwede naman din akong kumuha sa Pangilinan. Ang importante ho dito, kukuha ko ng taong may alam sa industriya na aking pinapasok pagkat hindi ko ho alam ito. Kailangan ho, gabayan ako ng taong may alam. Kaya kinuha ko yung sa aviation, sa land, sa rail. Kinuha ko ho yun. Kailangan ho ba pag-aralan ko from A to Z kung ano yung tinatawag na rails? Baka naman tapos na yung term. Hindi ko pa nalalaman kung ano nangyayari. Kaya dapat lang ho, kukuha ko nung may alam na. Ngayon, sa pananagutan, kasi issue ho ito, sa pananagutan ng conflict interest, wag ho kayong matakot, madam and members of the public service. Kasi USEC siya. Matakot kayo kung ako yung may conflict of interest. As secretary, ako ho yung magde-decide.
Madam Chair, with all due respect to Secretary Tugade, thank you very much for introducing your staff. Maybe we can go to the heart of the hearing
Yes,
today.
sir.
If we can cut short the introduction of your staff, we know they're all competent. I know Bobby Lim personally, but if we can go now to the substance of the hearing.
Thank you, sir.
Madam Chair. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for calling my attention. I will follow, sir. The topic is the 32,000 employees of DOT, more or less. Bakit ho kailangan ito? Doon ho sa tinatawag na special or emergency power, doon sa 32,000 employees, sa aming hong repaso, 10,000 ho yung may JO, yung job order. 10,000 ho yung may contract of services. Ibig sabihin, ma'am, hindi ho regular. At ang average ho nito, lumalagpas ng 2 years. May polisiya ho ang ating gobyerno na kung saan sinabi, ENDO, no contractualization. Pinag-aaralan ho namin to. May epekto ho ito when we discharge our responsibilities because you need manpower and number of heads. Ito ho yung isang estado. Yung pangalawang estado na gusto kong sabihin ay doon sa land sector. Ano ho meron sa land sector? In the interest of time, you will see the area there na kung saan nakapalipot at nakapaikot yung tinatawag na radial at circumferential road. Liliwanagin ko lang ho. Bibigyan tugon at pansin ko yung sinabi ni Senator Drilon. Ang Department of Transportation ho, as of this hour, as of this moment in time, walang kinalaman sa tinatawag na traffic management. Ang may kinalaman no sa traffic management, yung silbato ng pulis sa traffic ay ang MMDA at ang LGU. The reason why I said this is, ito ho yung tinatahak ng mga sasakyan, yung mga nabanggit ni Madam Chair kanina, na yung mga iba't ibang uri ng mga sasakyan dito. May tren, late. May aeroplano, late. May Uber, naipit sa traffic. Nakapastel ho doon, in the interest of time, I will not go in detail as to the mode of transportation. Dito ho, makikita nyo, ito na yung sinasabi, yung traffic. In fact, nabansagan ng Republika ng Pilipinas ang Metro Manila, the worst traffic on earth. Ito ho, realidad. Tama kayo, hindi na natin dapat pag-usapan yan. Ipaparepaso natin yan, ilagay lang natin sa ating isipan. Nasabi ng ating chairman, nasabi ni Senator Drilon na may experience siya na 11 hours papunta sa Tagaytay, sa Baguio. Merong experience din si Senator Ejercito. Ako rin ho, na-experience ko nung ako'y nagtatrabaho sa Clark, na kung saan umuwi ko araw-araw sa Ayala, Alabang. Not once, not twice, but 3 times. Na-traffic ko ako 8 hours, ma'am. Pauwi pa lang at night dahil ho dun sa palengke. So I share in your woes and miseries. And every one of us, as rightfully said, every one of us has experienced this woe and misery. Ano ho yung epekto nito sa ekonomiya? Meron hong JICA study noong 2014 na kung saan sinasabi, ang nawawala sa atin araw-araw at 2.4 billion pesos a day. Pag tinignan mo at 2016 timeframe, nandoon na ho yan sa 3 billion. On top of that, cap that with medical expenses, which according to the study by the World Bank, is amounting to $400 million yung bang health expenses related to pollution and to traffic. Ayun ho yung gastusin. Ma'am, kung hindi ho ito krisis, ano yung krisis? Makikita nyo ho dyan yung travel time. Importante ho yung dato na to. I will not go into the details. But let it be said that this study done by JICA shows that in Metro Manila, okay, ang average kuan mo is 95.1 minutes. Almost 2 hours, ma'am. Isambot mo dyan yung EDSA. Yung present number namin ngayon na dapat i-validate. Para mag-travel ka sa EDSA from Rojas Boulevard, papunta sa Balintawak Market, the average, ma'am, is 1 hour and a half. A little bit more. Okay? Ito ho, pag private cars. Pag bus ho, gawin mong 2 hours and a half yan. Ayan ho, yung tinutukoy at linalakbayan natin itong mga kapanahunan na to. Another data which I would like to call your attention to, ito na yung nabanggit ko, the aviation sector. Tama ho, hindi lang traffic sa lupa, may traffic din ho sa itaas. Yung traffic sa itaas sa aviation sector constitute 3 phases. Number 1 is when you enter the airport. Ibig sabihin, yung traffic papunta sa airport, sa bukana ng airport, na kung saan ang ating mga pasahero, kagaya natin. Mahilig tayong may kasamang barkada, baranggayan, at mahilig tayong mag-travel na tinatawag na we travel heavy. Nakakaroon ng traffic yan. Pag pumasok ka at nag-check-in, pumunta ka sa immigration, may traffic ko yan. Bago ka sumakay, may traffic. Nakasakay ka na, bago ka umalis, may traffic. Okay? Lahat ho, dyan ho, mapakikita nyo kung ano yung mga airports na meron tayo. Makikita nyo rin dyan na kung saan meron tayo mga airport na night rated. Ano ho yung ibig sabihin nun? Airport na pwedeng mag-operate maski na gabi on 24 hours. Importante ho na malaman ito because if you want to decongest NAIA, you have to give the capabilities to our airports in the provinces to be able to fly even in the middle of the night so that you expand the uses of NAIA. Makikita niyo ho sa isang slide kung saan merong mga airport na night rated, kung saan dito sa kapanahonang ito, gagawin namin mga airport night rated. Importante ho itong impormasyon na ito. At this point, papaalalanan ko lang ho, yung mga detalye, kung anong gagawin para addressin itong mga issues na ito, as requested in the letter, addressin ho ng mga individual attached agencies and the attached sector. I am just saying the generic environment at this time.
Madam Chair,
Intervene.
pwede for clarification lang ho, can the Secretary explain what is an international airport, what is a principal class 1 airport, and kung ano ho yung principal class 2 airport, pati ho yung community airport.
Apa.
I mean, kung ano yung diferensya nila sa isa't isa.
Nandoon ho, kung titignan po natin, ma'am, yung 11 International Airport, ito ho, 4 dito, nandito sa Manila, sa Luzon. Naiya, Lawag, Clark, isa pa, Subic. Ito ho, tandaan nyo yung Subic hindi gumagalaw. Yung principal class 1, ito ho yung mga aircraft na jet aircrafts of at least 100 seats.
For ano mga airport?
Meron ho mga airport dyan. Can you flash on the screen? Hindi daw ho nila makuha. Sasabihin ko na lang ho. Saan dito? Class 1 will be Butuan, Lagindingan, Bacolod, Cotabato, Tacloban, Dipolog, Dumaguete, Legazpi, Naga, Pagadian, Rojas, San Jose, Tacbilaran, Tuguegarao. We will be copy furnishing with the approval of the chairman. Will be copy furnishing all the members of the committee with hard copies of this, so that you will be guided on your for your appreciation of the data sheet.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Salamat
mo, ma'am.
Go ahead, Secretary.
Bibigyan din ho namin kayo ng cluster ng mga airport na ide-develop this year hanggang next year. I-improve kasama ho dyan yung ibibid pa ho ito sa PPP. Kasama dyan yung Davao, yung Bohol, yung Lagindingan, Iloilo, and Bacolod. Isasama ho natin in the second year yung mga ibang airport na kagaya ng Sir Bukidnon. You know, meron na hong budget yan. Bibigyan ho namin kayo ng complete list para malalaman nyo sapat na ba yung air positioning natin o hindi. Ibibigay po namin yan. And so, the basic problems here as aptly explained during the introductory remarks of Senator Chairman, Madam Chair, and Vice Chairman Ejercito. Ang problema ho, delayed flights, overcrowded airport terminals. Let me say at this point, let me translate the meaning of delayed flight. Of course, these numbers will have to be validated. Bagong dating po kami, 32 days pa lang. Average take-off delay is 30 minutes. Ibig sabihin, out Manila, 30 minutes. We will have to study that yet. Ang maganda ho, yung papasok sa Maynila. Kasama na ho yung hindi kayo makalipad sa pinanggalingan nyo kasi sasabihin nila may problema sa Maynila Terminal. Kasama rin ho yung tinatawag na encircling kasi may nangyari. Ma'am, 2 hours. Yes, sir. Grabe ho. Talagang grabe ho. Mamaya ho, papakita namin kung paano sa aming munting mundo aadresin namin yung mga delays na yan. Kasama ho yung encircling na minsan, sasabihin sa aeroplano, we cannot yet land, mga ganyan-ganyan. Pero in reality, either may problema sa terminal o walang slot. Yung landing slot. Yung delay naman ho, naka-slot ka na, hindi ka naman lumilipad. So lahat na de-delay. So may mga estado dyan na dapat yung hindi lumipad, lagay mo ulit sa huli para makalipad yung mga tipo hong ganyan. A-addressan ito by way, yung mga congestion, by way of process, by way of procedure, by way of infrastructure, by way of equipments na kung saan rin-require ng mga international organizations na dapat matagal nang nandiyan sa airport. Flash on the screen are just showing you the kind of overcrowding we have. Just to make sure that the pictures we present is not in any way bested or tainted with interest, kinuha ho namin yung mga picture na lumalabas sa dyaryo. So, Nandiyan dyan ho, pinapakita namin. At tignan nyo ho yung sample ng mga kubeta. Ito, ito ho yung mga estado natin ngayon sa mga paliparan. Hindi ko pa ho linalagay dyan yung mga kubeta sa mga seaports, yung mga kubeta sa rails. Kung ilalagay ko dyan, ito baka mas okay ito, ma'am. Ano? The rail sector, ito ho, anyway, i-explain ho yan mamaya para wala nang repeat. Papakita ho sa inyo yung speed, yung trend, yung coaches, yung speed, yung headway, lahat ho ipapakita yan. May delay ho, but I call your attention to one thing. On the right column, these are the incidents of unloading for 2015. Makikita nyo kung gaano ang highest pointer, yung MRT 3. 35 incidents of unloading. There are 12 months in a year. In other words, for every month, 3 unloading. Mamaya ho, i-explain din ho namin sa inyo yan. I call your attention to the other column, to the left. Tignan nyo ho yung utilization. Wala ho dyan more than 85% utilization of existing capacity. So that the problem na walang masakyan, yung mabagal ang headway, nandiyan dyan ho. Mamaya ho, susolusyonan ho natin yan. And again, the long lines of queuing, umaabot ka sa kalsada, nababasa yung mga tao, umuulan. Ngayon pa lang, sasabihin ko na ibang solusyon ho dito, yung common sense na lang eh. Kaya ho, ma'am, umahaba yung pila dyan kasi isa yung lugar na pinagbibilihan mo ng ticket. Kami ho, nakipag-usap na sa mga mall, sa mga establishmento. Meron na hong 75 na pumayag na kung saan magbebenta muna ng ticket, mano-mano lang ho muna. At least hindi na magkakarambola sa isang lugar. So, lahat ho yan ina-address. You can see the jump pack trains. Again, this is not our pictures. These are the pictures of media para we will not be accused of calibrating feeling or, may bested yung retrato. Galing ho sa media to. Unsafe conditions, totoo ho yan. Pag nag-breakdown, minsan bumababa na lang sila sa rails. Malungkot. Nakita ko ho mismo yan one time nung nagbabaan sa rails. We will also give you some solutions there, ma'am. Solutions that can range from 100 days, more than 100 days but less than 2 years, and a longer period. Okay, this is the generic presentation of the transportation sector. Hindi ho namin sinama dyan yung C. Kasi ma'am, wala ho dun sa sulat. Kaya sabi ko, yung C nandito rin, kung kinakailangan, ipipresenta namin. Pero sa sulat lang ho, is road, rail, and airport. Hindi ko ho kinakaligtaan yung C. Sinusundan ko lang po yung sulat. Having said this, ma'am, and having presented the general overview, with the approval of the chair, may I now yield the floor to the sector undersecretary to make a detailed presentation of what the generic outline seek to say.
Madam Chair,
Senator Drilon.
before we recognize the undersecretaries or the one basically in charge of each sector, we appreciate the presentation of Secretary Tugade. And what we note, and this is really good because you have pointed out to the Senate what are the issues that can be addressed through executive action. Yung kayo lang po, o yung with innovation, etc. I would like to hear from our resource persons before he passes it on to his staff. What are the policy issues that we must address in this Emergency Powers Act in order to assist your department in hastening the executive solutions that you have proposed? Because we are here trying to craft an Emergency Powers Act. We do appreciate that you have presented to us what are the problems and the proposed solutions per sector. But that, again, may involve executive action, which really would not go into the crafting of the emergency powers that we all find necessary. In fact, I authored the first one. So this is, with your permission, Madam Chair, I would like to raise this procedural issue to the Secretary.
Okay, sir. Let me address that now.
Okay,
Actually, there are details in each sectoral presentation that will touch on the emergency power. I agree, sir, that many, if not most, of what I have said are calling for executive action. Okay? Again, by way of generic presentation, yung mga details so sasabihin nila mamaya. Una ho, kailangan natin ng synchronized traffic system. Alalahanin nyo ho na yung traffic management dito, kaya sinabi ko kanina, ay tangan po ng MMDA yung mga circumferential at radial road. Ay tangan po ng local government. Kung nakakapansin ho kayo ng konting kaluwagan ngayon sa mga radial at circumferential road kagaya ng EDSA, tutumbok at masasaktan kayo pag lumiko sa kaliwa o lumiko sa kanan pagkat wala nang say po ang MMDA doon. Ang may say ho doon is local government. What do we need is a synchronized, uniform traffic system, traffic structure, traffic rules with one single traffic authority.
In other words, Madam Chair, the Secretary would want to see in the proposed Transportation Crisis Act a single authority to manage the traffic system in Metro Manila.
Tama po, sir.
Now, so that is the kind of policy issues that we would like to hear from the Secretary because as we all know, as I said in my opening statement, one of the things that I found is the numerous authorities trying to govern our
Tama po
traffic
kayo doon, sir.
system, and it has created a mess. So the first issue that you would want to the Senate to address or the Congress to address is to provide for a single authority to manage the traffic, at least for the period of emergency. Is that
Yes, sir.
correct?
2 years, sir.
Well, we can even say 3 years, Madam Chair, because under the Constitution, the emergency powers can last for the duration of Congress, of this Congress. So it can even be for 3 years, and we were willing to grant this. This is the limit. Now, so any other, I would like to hear from the Secretary issues like what you just mentioned.
Yes,
a
sir.
single traffic management authority.
Pangalawa ho,
Opo.
yung samot-sari na licensing
Mhm.
na nandito ngayon. May licensing authority po ang DOT through LTO saka LTFRB sa prangkisa. Meron hong authority rin ang MMDA. Yung mga tricycle at mga ano ba yun? Yung mga tricycle, kung yun, barangay level yun, you know? So
Yes.
LTO.
LGUs.
Yung mga LGU.
Oh.
So, sir, kailangan kumpasan ng maayos yun eh.
I agree. You know, that is these are the so yes. So the second policy issue is the multi-authority. I mean, the numerous authorities managing the same situation. And I
Kung
agree.
meron na hong authority, pumunta tayo sa lupa. Yung mga lupang dinadaanan. Traffic ho lahat yan, pag circumferential at radial, national government. Pag local roads, local government. Pag hindi nag-cooperate yung local, tapos yung radial. Pag nasolve mo yung radial at may basketball tournament ka sa isang barangay road, tapos ang ngalangala. So, kailangan ho, yung usage ng road, ng passage, kailangan din iisa ang kumukumpas.
So are you saying, Mr. Secretary, that at least for the period of emergency, we should suspend the powers of the local government units insofar as management of the traffic is concerned, at least in Metro Manila and in urban areas where there is a crisis, so that there is only one single authority. Is that what you're saying?
Parang ganun na ho, sir.
Yeah. No, huwag ka matakot. At, sabihin
Yes, sir.
mo kung anong kailangan natin. These
Yes,
are
sir.
the kind of policy issues that we would want to address. Now, what about procurement?
Punta ho muna tayo sa kalsada, sir.
Oh, sige.
Kasi
Okay.
sa kalsada, sabi nila, sobra-sobra na yung sasakyan. Para addressin mo yung sobra-sobra sasakyan, either bawasan mo yung sasakyan, magpatayo ka ng kalsada, o gumamit ka ng kalsada ng iba. Ito ho yung mga privately owned. Yung privately owned, kagaya ng subdivision A, subdivision B. Ayaw kong sabihin yung pangalan. Di ba? Yung mga ganyan, makikiran ho. Hindi naman makikiran tayo habang buhay or for the entire 24 hours.
Presently, who authorizes the entry or the use of subdivision roads for traffic? Who?
Yung subdivision owner ho, yung association,
okay, subdivision owner na.
homeowners po.
Okay, so again, that's an area where you want to...
Ngayon ho, nakikiusap naman ako sa iba. Yung iba okay, yung iba may mga kondisyones. But let it be said right here and now that our choices for private roads will not be arbitrary or whimsical. Number two, that we will not compromise the safety of the subdivision. The security mechanism shall be in place, and if need be, the security expense will be borne by government. The road maintenance, hindi naman tayo pwedeng dumaan lang ng dumaan dyan, sir. May gastos yung road maintenance. Hindi ko naman hingin kagad dyan. Pwede hong pag-usapan yon. Ang higit sa lahat, yung gamit ho, hindi 24 hours. I-define natin yung peak moment in time na kung saan dadaan
So who
dyan.
would have that authority now?
Wala ako, sir.
No, now in the proposed emergency powers, you would want to locate that authority somewhere. Who would want that
Doon ho
authority?
sa basta isang departamento. Pwedeng MMDA, pwedeng...
No, you must be specific, because as you said, a single
Saan
traffic
sir, sa
authority.
DOT. DOT daw, sir. DOT, sir.
DOT.
Yes,
You
sir.
would want to locate that authority with the DOT.
Sana ho, para kukumpas.
No, I'm aware. That's,
Sa
that's
traffic
why,
lang ho,
that's why you're a resource person
hindi
here.
yung buong pangkalahatan ng
There's
MMDA.
actually there are people suggesting that perhaps, Secretary, you should really be the one in charge of the traffic.
Why
So if
why
it's
doesn't the
in
secretary
DOT?
become
Because-
Madam Chair, pursuing that point? Why doesn't the secretary become the MMDA chairman?
I mean, both. I mean, let's not demote
in a
the
concurrent
Secretary
capacity. In a
But-
concurrent capacity, so you would have full control.
of the emergency powers.
Yeah.
Sa traffic ho,
Ha?
sa traffic. Wag na yung 17 mayors. Sabi mo kanina, yung 17 mayors. Mahirap.
Ganun talaga ang sitwasyon natin. Anong
No,
magagawa natin?
but that's also one of the conditions that we would want to have one point person who's really in charge
That's correct.
in implementing the emergency powers.
That is why the Transportation Secretary can concurrently be the MMDA chairman. Now, anyway, that's a policy issue again that we would like to examine.
Hindi naman
When-
tayo nagde-decide na dito.
Hindi pa po. No,
Pero naman, pero we're
that's-
note-taking already.
Any
so
other
that-
issue which you would want to have addressed in the transportation?
Yes, sir. Terminal.
Oh.
Madahili hong sabihin, ma'am, ang solusyon, tow truck at police. Para lang sa kaalaman ng Committee on Public Service, ang total terminal ho sa EDSA, sa EDSA lang, ilan mo? 27 terminals. And then, EDSA
So,
Pasay is 14.
We can say in the Emergency Power Act, effective X number of months, there will be no more terminals in
dapat
EDSA.
ho.
So that wala nang kailangan mag-decide pa ang...
Dalawang bagay ang
Oh.
dapat tugunan ho. Una, dapat may just compensation. Hindi naman tayo confiscatory.
Hindi nga. No.
Pangalawa ho,
Oh.
maglalagay ka ng remedyo na kung saan bibigyan mo sila ng alternatibong magkaroon ng tinatawag na common stations yung mga sasakyan. Kasi kung wala kong mga terminal yan, magkakaleche-leche lalo yan. Kaya dapat paplanuhan din
Yeah.
yung common station
Yeah, okay.
sa north saka sa south.
All right. What about on the procurement?
On the procurement, alam ho natin yan at naratnan ko yan na kung saan magkakaroon ka ng bibili ng mga bagay-bagay, tinatawag ho ma'am, bidding.
So,
Bidding, sir.
bidding.
Yung procurement. Yung procurement, limited ka sa 500,000 eh, yung bidding sa mataas na amount. Pumunta ho tayo sa mataas na amount. Doon sa mataas na amount, dito ho, pag bidding, pag may nanalo, may natalo. Yung nanalo, magpapalakpak yun, sandali lang yun. Kakasuhan nung natalo yun.
O, kaya nga, dapat walang TRO.
Dapat ho, wala TRO,
Oh, yan,
TRO
yan.
dyan. Ganon din ho yung procurement, yung bidding. Yung issue ng right of way, you know, naku, sasabihin ho natin, luwagan ang riles. 3,000 lang nandiyan dyan na right of way. Paano ho natin maiibsan at paano ho natin masusolusyonan yon? Kailangan natin tulong-tulong. So there will have to be issues, sir, on injunction, on procurement, on bidding, on right of way.
And resettlement, Madam
And
Chairman.
resettlement.
I would like to acknowledge the presence of Senator Dick Gordon as well as Senators Angara.
Thank you very much.
And,
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. That's all that I have for the Chair. Thank you very much.
Senator Drilon, and also our Majority Leader, Tito Soto, and Senator Alan Cayetano.
Madam Chair.
I think Senator Gordon was going to...
Well, I just wanted to interject a point on that we must give that the tendency is to give absolute powers to one agency. I think the good secretary is interested in improving the flow of traffic so that business and the passengers and the riding public as well as the pedestrians can have safe, speedy, adequate transportation so that nobody will be impeded. But there would be issues on local government, the local government code, which we would have to address here. I'm sure all the senators are aware of that. So before we go in all fours and say we will give you all the rights, we will have to really find out from you what other concerns are there where you might get into a legal locking of horns with other agencies, for an example.
Yung locking and unlocking of manggagaling sa LGU, sa private owners ng mga property, manggagaling sa MMDA. Ang kaya ho natin dun sa government agencies is you integrate and you merge certain responsibilities and functions under one head. Ang kailangan ho natin dun sa pribado is magkaroon tayo ng formula na kung saan hindi tayo magiging whimsical or arbitrary dun sa paggamit ng mga property nila. Hindi naman ho yata ugma yun. Ito ho, parang yung sinabi nyo kanina, ma'am.
As a follow-up, Madam, the issue of resettlement, particularly on the train side, you have thousands of people on the trains, and every day, almost every day, there are accidents involved. What would be the position of your agency insofar as lifting these people, practically creating social engineering, and bringing these people to another area? You would have a problem of resettlement, wouldn't you?
Yes, sir.
And is that something that you
Secretary,
are...
before you answer the question, perhaps I can request the senators. Secretary, go ahead and answer the question of Senator Gordon. But in your succeeding presentations, if you can include already your detailed problems and also your policy solutions,
Apo.
so that at least we can all ask our questions after the presentations have been made. So go
The-
ahead, please, for
The chairperson is really correct because I was expecting an overview before we get into the nitty-gritty. We want the essence of the problem before we go into the essay, which is what to do and how to do it. And that is why I think the chair is correct when she says, give us an overview. What are the legal issues, the legal challenges, what are the physical problems, the resettlement issues, and then the Senate would well be within its mind to be able to help and assist the riding public into making sure that the problems will be addressed properly. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Madam Chair.
Sabi po ng ating Pangulo sa kanyang SONA, no demolition without relocation. Nasabi ho ng Pangulo ito, kaya bigyan katuparan ito. Pagbibigyan ho natin ng katuparan ito, susundan ho natin yung konsepto na sinabi ni Senator Gordon na along the lines of social engineering. Along the lines of social engineering. So, nandyan ho, pag libo-libo na yung ililipat mo, kailangan i-define mo yung saan lilipat. Anong potensyal o actual na hanap buhay na nandoon. may laban ba yan o ano? Ito ho, titignan dyan. May katagalan ng konti yan. Pero mababawasan yung konting katagalan kung merong special power without going into the lines of arbitrariness and undue courses of action.
Madam Chair, I just want to, on that note, I'd like to propose, move that in the next hearing regarding this, that we invite also officials from the housing sector because this will have a housing component.
I think it will all unravel later on the other agencies that we
Madam
need
Chair.
to call. In fact, also the local government mayors, we need to
Finance
have them
also,
come in.
Madam Chair, not a
Senator
question,
Cayetano.
just a manifestation. Magandang umaga po to our colleagues, Secretary, and to the DOTC family. Just as a manifestation, first of all, Madam Chair, thank you for including Senate Bill 999, although I just filed it last Monday. But let me assure our colleagues, especially Senator Drilon, the issues that he brought up, kung may single authority, kung yung policy, bidding, kasama to lahat dun sa version na final ko na SB 999. In fact, with the permission of our colleagues, we went beyond traffic on land, but we included air and ports as the version of Senator Ejercito also mentions. No? But third, we included the issue of decongestion because the traffic hearing Secretary Tugade, not only today, his pronouncement since he was appointed, he has a good idea of what to do in the first 100 days, in the first year, in the first 3 years. But long term, unless ma-decongest mo at lahat ng region sa ating bansa ay magkakaroon ng development, this problem will just keep cropping up. That's why we included decongestion. So sa version po na final natin, yung traffic czar is the DOT secretary. Not necessarily Secretary Tugade, but whoever is the DOTC secretary. No? Last point, Madam Chair, no? And I hope this was a campaign promise of the President and myself, and I know how much Secretary Tugade loves the Clark area, the Clark-Subic area, and Senator Gordon is here, no, who's taken care of that his whole life. If the OTC can move immediately to Clark, then you will be leading by example, no? Because this is one way to decongest. But let me stop at this point and just to, may I ask, is there a response?
Madam Chair, 2 points. Number one, dun sa transferring DOTC. In fact, since 3 weeks ago, yung sinasabi nating decongestion, kailangan yung mga ibang opisina ng gobyerno lumipat from Metro Manila. Already, my staff are pencil pushing. If there is a need for us to lead the way, I will lead the way. Yung DOT ho, ililipat ko yan sa Clark if I find the suitable justifications for it, and I would like to think that I will find the suitable justification for it. Then it will give a signal, an initiating signal to government offices na hindi naman kailangan nandito sa Metro Manila. Lilipat ko yung DOT dun sa Clark. Pangalawa ho, para kadagdag pananawan, overview, dagdag overview lang ho. Dun sa term ko ng 6 years, yung start of the year hanggang 1.5 year, yun ho yung tinatawag kong period of the low-lying fruits. Ibig sabihin, yung mga madadaling dapat gawin, yung kung nakabase sa sentido komon para maibsan ang traffic, gagawin ko. Doon sa after 1.5 years hanggang 4 years, 4 years, nandito na ho yung medium term at short term. Nandiyan na yung mga tinatawag na ponton bridge, yung mga modular bridge, nandiyan na ho yung BRT, nandiyan na ho yung cable, yung mga istruktura. Sasabihin nyo, nasaan yung mga underpass, overpass? Nandiyan ho yan, dun sa inahangad kong magawa sa tulong ninyong lahat, yung tinatawag na 30 years roadmap of the Republic on transportation and traffic. Kasi kung hindi ho tayo gagawa niyan, yung experience sa EDSA ay mai-experience kung saan-saan dito sa Republika. Already it is being experienced in Cebu, already the signs are being shown it will experience in Davao. Okay, it is a development plan. Pero ang plano ko ho dito, hindi ordinaryong development plan. It is a development plan that is legislated. Ibig sabihin, pag legislated, gusto mong baguhin, amindahin mo yung batas. Lahat ng inputs ng bawat probinsya nando doon, so that you can have a 30 years expectation that before the end of the 30th year, you will have your own development plan of transportation and traffic in your area. Pondo. Initially, the pondo, sana wag umasa sa GAA. Pasing tabi na lang ho. Kasi kung aasa yung pondo sa GAA, that is one way of circumventing the development plan. Kailangan ho, we create a sinking fund na kung saan mag-aambag-ambag mga ibang aktibidades na pupunta sa sinking fund. Ehemplo, alimbawa ho yung development ng mga military bases. Okay? A certain portion of that, put it there. Ehemplo, yung mga bawat gasolina per liter, ilagay mo dyan. I'm not saying this as a matter of final position. These are all being studied. Even the development will be along the line of a 30 years development plan. Bakit 30 years? Kasi ho, 5 presidente lang yan. Pag 5 presidente ang titignan mo, mukhang maiksi yan, sir. Pero pag 30 years, mukhang mahaba. But until and unless we have a legislated development plan in traffic and transportation, God have mercy on us. EDSA experience of horrific and horrendous traffic will be experienced all over.
Madam Chair, thank you for that response. And the last point I wanted to make is if in the next hearing we can also have the representative of the different leagues, because we hear loud and clear yung sinasabi ni Secretary Tugade, marami talagang problemang na-create, whether kasalanan ng LGU o hindi. But many of us here, like Senator JV, mother niya is a mayor, si Senator Ralph, dating governor, yung asawa, my wife is a mayor, Senator Dick ran one of the best cities when he was the mayor and led the way in many innovations. But Mr. Secretary, it went both ways. During the campaign, I do agree that you are the best person to implement this. During the campaign, the consultation of now President Duterte, then Mayor Duterte and myself, will give you certain examples. No? The DOTC then hardly talked to any of the LGUs when they were building major projects in their areas. And then, pagka umangal yung LGU after, sasabihin kaya may delay. But it's clear in the local government code that you have to consult at the planning stage. So I think there's a way to have one authority or one policy. There's a way to coordinate. But let's put all of these people in the room together because may concerns din naman talaga sila sa local constituency nila.
Senator Alan, in fact, I manifested that earlier, that we will be inviting the LGUs to come in and also other related departments that will be discussed as they proceed with their presentations.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you,
Just
sir.
to end with an example. Yung bus terminal na gagawin sa Taguig. So, pinangako lahat yon ni isang beses hindi kinausap yung LGU, and then pinangako ng DPWH yung infrastructure. It's a year and a half later, wala pa yung infrastructure. Yung mismong right-of-way at road na blame nila na right-of-way, hindi naman nila kinonsult yung mga sasagasaan at walang alternative. So in the level of theory and giving the powers, madali and we will all agree with the examples that we all give here. But when it comes to the actual implementation, I think isa sa pinakamalaking sakit ng ulo ni DOTC Secretary, but we'll have to support him, is dealing with the subdivisions. So it's not enough that we give him the power, the money for additional security, but we also should give him the leeway of negotiating with them on an individual basis sa homeowners association. Kasi kung hindi, well, basically ang Pangulo sa ngayon, ang kalaban lang drugs and illegal mining. Kung lahat ng subdivision sa bansa makakalaban ni Secretary Tugade, halos buong Pilipinas kalaban niya. That's the reality, no? That's why hindi po madali ang hinihingi ni Secretary Tugade. But I think the amount of emergency powers should also be matched by the amount of goodwill and backing by the two houses of Congress for him to be able to accomplish it. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Madam Chair.
Who was going to say? I think Senator Gordon has a quick follow-up, and
Yeah,
then
just a short
Senator De
follow-up,
Lima. But again, I'd like to appeal to my fellow senators if we can continue with the presentation. So please make it as brief as
Yes,
possible.
I was going to say that, Madam Chair, because I'm glad that the Secretary has the vision of really going into the whole area. But we have to win in Metro Manila first, in Cebu perhaps, and in Davao. And that's why we're here today. And I'm glad that she's also taking up the aspect of decongestion of cities, because we have been very remiss in urban redevelopment, and this will be another topic for another committee later on. But the important thing here to remember is that we want to get the overview. For example, when you hit Manila, you have markets that take over half the highway when you get out of North Expressway. There are markets along Cubao, rich markets near Cubao, that even intervene in the planning of MRT and LRT. You know, it's the only area in the whole world where you get out of an LRT and then you have to walk through a shopping center to be able to ride to Marikina. That is a fact, Your Honor. And these are things that we have to unravel. The other thing that we have to unravel over and above that is our decision, and I'm glad that the Secretary mentioned that, decongestion of Metro Manila, utilizing the three airports of Subic, Clark, and Manila that I have long been fighting for, even in 1971 in the Constitutional Convention, that we have to utilize these airports, joint use at that time, and now utilize them now. And that's another topic for another investigation. But it is all part and parcel of a parcel of problems that this country has been totally inconvenienced, totally been subjected to more poverty. And that is why I bow to the wisdom of our chair that we get the whole overview right away before we even go to all kinds of places right away, such as railroads. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator Gordon. Senator De Lima.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Let me start by saying that the Secretary here has actually managed or has succeeded in depicting a very distressing picture or situation in the transportation sector. And I don't think any one of us can actually disagree with that overview, and which almost makes the issue of whether there exists an emergency or national emergency to warrant the grant of emergency powers to the President almost a non-issue. I don't know with my colleagues if they agree with that. So I'm very eager to further see the presentation. But let me just point out one particular matter at this point, because I noticed that of the three bills now before us, at least two of them, the Ejercito bill and the Cayetano bill, propose the appointment of a traffic czar. Senator Cayetano refers to it as a traffic czar, while Senator Ejercito refers to it as a transport manager. Now, when we say we want to grant emergency powers, and as the Constitution would contemplate, this is supposed to be a grant of emergency powers to the President. So I doubt whether we can further grant emergency powers to a particular official, even if that particular official is a subordinate or an alter ego of the President. So that's one point. Number two is, there would be a problem there, because all of the departments, the agencies, the line agencies, you do have your own statutory mandate and authorities. A traffic czar, a singular official, cannot just be vested with broad powers to be able to override the functions of these line agencies. So may I have the opinion of or the view of the good secretary as to how open he is to the idea of a single official to be appointed as. I have no problem with a single authority as the one being espoused by Senator Drilon, with clear delineation of that central authority, but with respect to single official, is it something that sits well with the good secretary?
Maybe that is also worth looking into, Madam Senator. But I hope my comment does not necessarily mean in any way or two that I'm volunteering and I'm accepting. Pwede ho yun. Mas maganda ho yung isa lang talaga ang kumukumpas. Pwede hong isang grupo, pero isa lang ang responsible na kumukumpas. Lahat ho yun. Yung
Na-answerable sa Pangulo.
na-acceptable sa Pangulo.
I think we can continue. We can debate on the technical, the legal technicalities later on, but I think I'd like to continue with the presentation now.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Madam Chair, distinguished senators, good morning. For the land sector, yung pong presentation kanina at yung pagsagot ni Secretary dun sa mga katanungan, mukhang marami po sa aking ipepresenta ay na-discuss na. But let me just go through over that presentation. So yun na nga po nasabi, meron na rin po kaming na pili na mga alternate roads sa loob ng subdivision. At nabanggit na rin po yan kanina ni Secretary kung paano, ano yung pwedeng sagutin ng gobyerno at yung po mga detalya nito. Yung ikalawa po, a single authority, which we have just discussed earlier. Okay. So we now go to the road traffic congestion caused by public utility vehicles. At ito nga po ay isa sa mga problema. At ang kanina earlier, we have discussed about prohibiting bus terminals along major thoroughfares such as EDSA. Binilang po namin yung data po namin galing sa MMDA. Meron pong 27 bus terminals sa EDSA Cubao area lang. And in EDSA Pasay, there are 14. Some 2 weeks ago, yung planning group po namin conducted a survey in that area. And based on their survey, tinitingnan po nila yung labas at pasok ng mga bus na galing probinsya. And based on their survey, it would mean that every 2 minutes, there will be a bus that will go out or go inside the terminal. So can you just imagine po yung traffic na nabibinbin because yun naman pong bus, malaki po ang ano niyan eh. At paglabas niyan, mga 2 lanes agad ang ma-occupy. Pagpasok, ganun din po. Kaya po very strict yung in our traffic management plan now, we have deployed our LTO enforcers in that area, in that from Pituazon to Ermin Garcia, na yung pong mga pasaway na mga buses, kay city siya o provincial, we give them tickets because they obstruct the flow of traffic. So, yun po yung nangyayari ngayon. Kaya po, sinama rin at napag-usapan na rin po yan earlier. Now, we also would like to rationalize yung second. Yung pong rationalized routes to improve efficiency of public transport and better address the needs of the riding public and the franchising issues. Kasi nga po kung maglipat na tayo ng mga terminals, there will be a different permutation of the routes. So tinitingnan din po namin because meron na rin po tayo na MUSEP, yung Metro Manila Urban Transport Update and Capacity Enhancement Program where we gathered the data. Yung pong pinakita kanina na map of Mega Manila, that's where we gathered our data. where we can more or less determine from those data kung saan po yung mga pinanggagalingan ng ating mga mananakay papunta sa kanilang trabaho, papunta sa kanilang sa school. So, yun po. Kailangan po namin para po madali na mag-reroute, i-rationalize yung mga ruta ng mga public transport. At base din po dito, meron po kaming proposed alternative transport system as was already discussed. The bus rapid system where there is a dedicated lane. Para rin po itong rail transit, LRT, but it is on the road. It is also run by a signaling system. May oras, may operating like a train. We also would like to have the cable car, double-decker bus, P2P bus service. Yun naman pong point-to-point bus service, this is like express bus. Like, sa ngayon, we have 3 routes, Alabang to Makati, North EDSA or Trinoma to Makati. So, wala po itong tigil, walang tigilan. So, ang tinatarget po natin dito ay yung we encourage the car users to use public transport. So sa ngayon po yung point-to-point, for example, when we did a survey 2 weeks ago in Alabang route, 40% of the passengers are former car users. So if we can just encourage the car users to use more public transport, then we can decrease the number of cars using the road. So, yun din po ang ating gustong mangyari. At yung pong yung kanina na binanggit tungkol sa procurement, yung pong, we may have to, yung bus rapid transit, kailangan po yung mga procurement doon. Also, the pontoon bridge at the Pasig River at Makati.
At yan po ang joint hearing ng Committee on Public Service, Committee on Constitutional Amendment at Committee on Finance sa Senado hinggil sa pagbibigay ng emergency powers kay Pangulong Rodrigo Duterte para resolbahin ang problema sa trapiko. Kanina nagbigay ng kanyang opening statement si Committee on Public Service Chair Senadora Grace Poe at inisa-isa niya ang mga nararanasang problema ng mga commuter at biyahero dahil sa krisis sa bigat ng trapiko sa kalsada man o sa mga paliparan. Anya, kailangan maging malinaw kung ano ba ang magiging ibig sabihin ng emergency powers at kung matutugunan ba ng emergency powers ang problema. Kailangan daw ng emergency powers na ibibigay sa Pangulo ay FOI compliant, fiscally responsible, detalyado at may deadline. Kasalukuyang naman nagsasagawa ng kanyang presentasyon ang Department of Transportation para ilatag kung ano-ano ba ang mga partikular na problema at suliranin sa sektor ng transportasyon at kasalukuyan din nilang inalalatag ang kanilang mga ipinapanukalang solusyon. At para sa iba pang balita, bisitahin lang ang aming websites at official social media accounts. At tutok lang dito sa GMA News TV para oras-oras. Alam mo, ako po si Trisha Zafra. Magandang umaga.